All right, hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Stuff I Googled this week. The show by the ignorant, for the ignorant, in an attempt to make us all a bit less ignorant. Well, it's been another week. There have been another dozen scandals in US politics. Stuff's pretty chill in Canada. Although, our PM is, a lot better than Trump, but not as good as he could be. But enough about that. Today we're going to be talking about the wonders of the world. Normally I do a bunch of different topics, but when I started doing the wonders of the world, it just kind of, stuff kept coming up. So I just kept doing it to the point where I have basically enough material for one whole episode. So rather than doing a bunch of different topics this week, we're just going to do wonders of the world. So we've all heard of the phrase, wonders of the world, or wonders of the ancient world, or natural wonders of the world. But what are they? What's the difference? What's the deal? Where's the beef? Let's find out. So I'll first go over the original 7 wonders of the world, which was put together in the 2nd century BC. Then I'll do the new 7 wonders of the world, and then I'll do the 7 natural wonders of the world. You may recognize a lot of these if you play a lot of Civilization, like I have. My God, I've played a lot of Civ 5. So let's just hop right into it. Also, as a side note, if you notice that I sometimes say about and sometimes say about, it's because I'm having a bit of an accent crisis at the moment, because I'm Canadian. So my natural instinct is to say about. And it goes, it varies from about to about to about, but a lot of it is pretty Canadian. The way I describe it is, it's like you're saying a boat with a British accent. A boat. But the thing is, I've been doing a lot of audiobooks that are in first person, where the main character is supposed to be American. So I've kind of gotten into the habit of talking with an American standard accent, where it's less about and more about. So you may notice that I switch between the two as I talk. Same with various other words. And if it bothers you, I'm sorry. Or I'm sorry. Look at that. Anyway, with that little tangent out of the way, let's hop into the first joke. 1, 2, 3 cat raced under 3 cat across a pond. Who won? 1, 2, 3 cat, because under 3 cat sank. Saw that one coming a mile away, I'm sure. But I kind of like it. All right, so topic 1, we have the wonders of the world. Now, it should be noted that there isn't really a definitive list. Over time, various groups have stated these are the great wonders of the world, but there are obviously so many amazing structures and buildings and things like that that are wonderful. But I had to choose one, so I'm going to go with probably the best known list of ancient wonders, which was put together by Greek historian Herodotus and later Callimachus of Cyrene. So the first one is the Great Pyramid of Giza in El Giza, Egypt. This is the only one of the original 7 to still exist, despite being the oldest, which is kind of interesting. It's the oldest and largest of the 3 pyramids in the Giza complex. It's believed that it was built as a tomb over a 10 to 20 year period, ending in around 2560 BC. Yowza. It was 481 feet tall when it was first built. It actually used to have a smooth outer surface with a layer of limestone over top, but that wore away eventually, leaving only the rough, chunky core structure that we see today. Which is really disappointing, because that would have been totally boss. Man. Next, we have the Colossus of Rhodes in Rhodes, Greece. This was a statue of the Greek sun god Helios, made by Charis of Lindos in 280 BC. As always, these are estimates of what the names probably sound like. I'm not going to be Googling every single name I come across. It celebrated the island's successful defense against Demetrius Poliorcetes. It was over 100 feet high, making it the tallest statue in the ancient world at the time. Sadly, it collapsed in the earthquake of 226 BC, with only parts being preserved. Next, we have the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And this was in Babylon, in the area now called Iraq, or Iraq. Stories vary on the origin of these gardens, and even whether or not they existed, but one accepted legend is that they were built by Neo-Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled from 605 to 562 BC. Dates in BC are really confusing because smaller numbers are further in the future. It's weird. According to this legend, it was built for his wife, Queen Amytis, because she missed the green hills and valleys of her homeland. It's an incredible feat of engineering involving a series of tiered gardens on various levels of the building, with trees, shrubs, vines, all sorts of amazing plants. It was made to look like a large green mountain with all sorts of plants. There was no firmly established location. We know the general area, but we don't know where it was supposed to be. There are no direct textual references, no archaeological evidence, so there are three options. First, it may have been a pure myth, just a romantic ideal of an Eastern garden made up by Greeks and Romans. Second, it did exist, but it was completely destroyed sometime around the 1st century AD. And the third is that the legend actually refers to the garden of Assyrian king Sennacherib, which is actually well documented. Neat. I actually didn't know that it might not have even existed. Next, we have the Lighthouse of Alexandria in Alexandria, Egypt. This was built by the Ptolemaic kingdom around 280 to 250 BC and is believed to have been about 330 feet tall. By the way, Ptolemaic, that's starting with a P, like Ptolemaic, but I'm pretty sure the P's silent. Doesn't really translate over audio. It was damaged heavily by 3 earthquakes between 956 and 1323 AD, but survived in part until 1480 when it was replaced by the citadel of Kate Bay. A fun fact, the last of the lighthouse's stones were used in the building of the citadel. The Mausoleum at Halicarnassus is our next one. This was found in Halicarnassus, modern-day Turkey. The tomb was built between 353 and 350 BC for King Mausolus and his sister wife Artemisia II of Caria. It was roughly 148 feet in height and had sculptural reliefs on each of the 4 sides created by 4 Greek sculptors: Leochares, Bryaxis, Scopas of Paros, and Timotheus. If you don't know what a relief is, like I didn't, reliefs are kind of like sculpture paintings, where the sculpture includes the background and images in the foreground. Look it up. You may have seen it at a museum. I'm sure if you've been to, any sort of museum with ancient art in it, you've probably seen at least one relief. They're really nice looking. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus was slowly destroyed by earthquakes between the 12th and 15th century, and mausoleum is now used generically to describe an above-ground tomb, but originally it was only used because it was the king's name, so this is actually the origin of the term mausoleum. It is interesting. I won't remember, and I don't expect you to remember all the little facts about each thing, but things like that, where you learn that mausoleum was actually originated by the king Mausolus, is pretty cool. Next, we have the statue of Zeus at Olympia, in Olympia, Greece. This was made by Greek sculptor Phidias around 435 BC and was erected at the Temple of Zeus in Olympia. And Phidias is the same guy that did the statue of Athena Parthenos in the Parthenon. So, kind of a big deal. So hot right then. It was roughly 41 feet tall, or 12.4 meters. It's said to be made of ivory plates and gold panels on a wooden frameboard. And all this description is based on Greek descriptions and representations on coins because it was lost and destroyed in the 5th century AD, so we don't really have evidence of it physically. And finally, we have the Temple of Artemis. This is in Ephesus, or modern-day Turkey. The temple was dedicated to the goddess Artemis, goddess of the hunt, obviously. It was actually rebuilt twice. So the first one was built in the Bronze Age and was attributed to the Amazons. That was destroyed by a flood in 7th century BC. Then it was rebuilt around 550 BC, made fancier, and then destroyed in 356 BC by Herostratus, who burned it down. Then the third iteration is the one that was a wonder of the world. The third and final iteration was gone by 401 AD, and we don't really know why. All right, that's it for the first Seven Wonders of the World, that was put together almost 2,000 years ago. But much more recently, there was a new list made of stuff that was, still around, so we can actually go look at them rather than just read books about them. Now, there is some disagreement here, as with the other one, because various groups have different beliefs as to what should be considered a wonder. But from what I can tell, the most commonly used list is the one that was made by the Swiss corporation, the New Seven Wonders Foundation, in 2007. Much of this decision was based on what I was personally familiar with, which is more or less what's in Civ 5. But I think most people will also be familiar with these, so let's do it. As a side note, the Great Pyramid of Giza wasn't initially listed, but it was added as an honorary member of the list, so, that again. Now, the first proper member of the list is the Great Wall of China. Where is it found? China. When was it built? It started in the 7th century BC. Now, we all know this, but the Great Wall of China is a series of defensive structures that were used to protect China from various nomadic groups, like the Mongolians. It was also good at maintaining a border, charging duties, and regulating immigration. Now, the wall wasn't actually intended to be a great wall. Sections were built over huge amounts of time, like whole dynasties, with some sections being connected long after they were built. So they were just defensive structures that served a defensive purpose in that area, but it wasn't really intended to just be this long line. But it became one, and then it got on the list, so it was worth it. Next, we have Petra. Where is it found? Jordan. When was it built? 100 BC. Now, Petra is pretty unique in that it's an archaeological city in southern Jordan. It was actually the capital city of the Nabatean kingdom in the 2nd century BC. At its peak, it had 20,000 inhabitants, which is insane. Now, it had some really cool engineering. It was in the middle of the desert, so water was scarce, but it was subject to flash floods. So they controlled these floods using dams, cisterns, and water conduits, allowing them to store water and either use it when drought hit or sell it. Now, there's a lot I could say about it. It's really interesting, so I would really suggest, Googling it on your own, but I'm trying to be somewhat brief, so I'll stop there. Next, we have Christ the Redeemer. Where was it built? Brazil. When was it built? Well, it opened on October 12, 1931, but it was built from 1922 to 1931. It stands about 100 feet tall, or 30 meters tall. It's made of reinforced concrete and soapstone. Now, as you may have guessed, it's a statue of everyone's favorite bastard, Jesus. I gotta be honest, I just realized that Jesus was technically a bastard, and I find it pretty funny. Right? He was a son of God. He wasn't Joseph's son. Joseph had nothing to do with that baby. And Mary wasn't married to God. Right? If this is baloney, just let me know in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's legit. Anyway, yeah, big statue of Jesus. Looks really cool, especially when it's lit up at night. Go see it if you're in Brazil. Next, we have Machu Picchu, which is found in Peru. It was built in 1450 AD. Now, this is a 15th century Inca citadel built on a mountain range. Most archaeologists think it was built as an estate for Pachacuti, an Inca emperor. Also, fun fact, I always thought you should say Incan, but it turns out you just say Inca, or Incas if you're referring to the people. Another fun fact, Inca was the word for emperor, so when I said an Inca emperor earlier, I was kind of just saying an emperor, or an Inca. Oops. Anyway, it was built around 1450, but then 100 years later, the Spanish came with their conquistadors, so they had to abandon it. But the Spanish didn't actually know about it, so it just kind of chilled untouched during the colonial period. Eventually, it was brought to the attention of the outside world, and they all thought it was sick, and it became a wonder. And it was being restored for some time. I think it might still be under construction or under restoration. I don't know how you word that. Basically, it said currently under restoration on Wikipedia, and I don't know how recently that was updated. Next, we have the Chichen Itza, not the Chichen Itza. It translates to at the mouth of the well of the Itza, or Itza. It's spelled Itza, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Itza. Chichen Itza. I'm pretty sure that's the right pronunciation. It has accents over the E and the A, so it looks like you're supposed to stress those syllables, if I remember my university Spanish classes. Now, where is it found? Mexico. When was it built? 600 AD. It's a large pre-Columbian city built by the Maya people. Pre-Columbian means before the arrival of Columbus, so before 1492. It's one of the largest Maya cities. And again, I had some confusion with Maya versus Mayan. Maya is a noun or an adjective, like a Maya person, Maya sculptures. Mayan is generally what people call the language. Also, while you would say the Incas built this, you wouldn't say the Mayas built this. It's always singular. So while you would talk about the Incas, you only talk about the Maya. Also, as another note that I actually didn't realize, Chichen Itza refers to the whole city, but the image you often see of the pyramid-looking thing is just the Temple of Kukulsan, which is kind of the central building of Chichen Itza. Kukulsan was a feathered serpent god. Next, we have the Coliseum, which we all know about. I find it weird that this wasn't on the old list, because it's been around for ages, and it was right in that area, but maybe since the old list was made by Greeks, they were like, screw the Romans. Anyway, this was made in Italy. It was completed in 80 AD. It's also known as the Flavian or Flavian Amphitheater. I think Flavian. I never heard it called that, but apparently it's pretty common. It was named as such because it was built in part over the reign of 3 emperors, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, which make up the Flavian dynasty. Also, I looked it up and it is Flavian. This was the largest amphitheater ever built at the time. It held 50,000 to 80,000 spectators. Now, in terms of how it was used, we all know about the gladiator battles, because that's pretty much all we ever see in the Coliseum in movies. But they also held public spectacles, mock sea battles, animal hunts, executions, reenactments of famous battles, and dramas based on Roman mythology. Now, in the early medieval era, it stopped being used for entertainment. Later, it was used as all sorts of things. It was used for housing, workshops, a fortress, a quarry, and even a Christian shrine. Next, we have the Taj Mahal. Where? India, of course. When was it built? 1648 AD. It translates to Crown of the Palace. It's a white marble mausoleum in Agra, India. It was commissioned by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan to be the tomb of his favorite wife, and it was also his tomb. And the building itself is the centerpiece of a 42-acre complex, which includes a mosque and a guest house. It cost 32 million rupees back in mid-17th century, which, adjusting for inflation and converting to American dollars, works out to just under $1 billion, which is an awful lot. And it's often considered the jewel of Muslim art in India. Nifty. Alright, I think it's time for another joke. This one's an oldie but a goodie, and I'll clean it up slightly because I'm trying to be relatively clean on this channel. Or this podcast. I just need some tea. So a man's been drinking at the bar all night, and he pukes right down the front of his shirt. And he goes, oh, what am I going to do? And the bartender sees it and he goes, hey, look, don't worry about it, okay? Here's what you do. You put a $20 bill in your pocket, and when you get home and your wife sees a puke, you just tell her, hey, some other guy puked on my shirt and it gave me $20 to get it cleaned. So the guy thinks that's a great idea. So, you know, at the end of the night, he goes home, his wife sees the puke on his shirt and asks what happens, and he says, oh, look, a drunk guy puked on me and he gave me $20 to pay for dry cleaning. And she says, well, okay, but why do you have $40 in your hand? And he goes, oh, that's right, I forgot. He also crapped in my pants. I love that one. Turned into Elwood Dowd a little bit there, but, you know, that's for the Harvey fans in the audience. Anyway, moving on to our final topic of the day, the natural wonders of the world. Also, you may have noticed that I'm not going to be doing Did You Know this week, partly because this is already getting pretty darn long, and partly because I just can't be bothered. You know, just not feeling it, and that's okay. You're saved from the awful theme song. Now, moving on to the natural wonders of the world. Again, there are a lot of natural wonders, so I'll be going with the list put together by CNN and the 7 Natural Wonders organization. First, we have Mount Everest. Known as the highest spot on Earth, 8,848 meters above sea level. It's found between Nepal and Tibet. The original name in Tibetan is Chomolungma, meaning Goddess Mother of Snow. In 1865, it got an English name, Everest, because foreigners weren't allowed in Nepal or Tibet when it was discovered, so they couldn't learn the name of it, so they just made up their own name. Now, that's what it says on Wikipedia, but I feel like that's a little hinky because someone would tell them. True, they're not allowed in, but there are Nepalese and Tibetans outside of the country who they could talk to, but, take it with a grain of salt, is all I'm saying. Now, it was famously climbed by New Zealander Sir Edmund Hillary with his Sherpa companion Tenzing Norgay. Now, it's possible that there were other Sherpas that had gone to the top previously, but these were the first 2 to actually go there officially. And apparently, Mount Everest has since been ruined by tourists who, with the help of a lot of high-tech stuff, try to do it and then either fail and leave their crap everywhere or, die and leave themselves everywhere. It's not a good situation. Still cool, though. Next, we have the harbor of Rio de Janeiro, located in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, obviously. It's also known as Guanabara Bay. It's a harbor surrounded by granite mountains. It makes for some beautiful photos. Often it's included in photos of Christ the Redeemer because they're close together and they both look awesome. Apparently, due to deforestation and pollution, there's been a lot of damage to the ecosystem, and I'm sure the current government isn't too concerned about that either. Bolsonaro can rub a monkey's tummy with his head, for all I'm concerned. Next, we have Aurora Borealis, also known as the Northern Lights. An aurora, as a general term, is a natural light display in the sky, usually seen in high-latitude regions like the Arctic or the Antarctic. Aurora comes from the Roman goddess of the dawn, Aurora, and Aurora Borealis specifically refers to the northern or Arctic lights. Now, what causes an aurora? Well, it's caused by disturbances in the magnetosphere caused by solar wind. Sometimes these disturbances change the trajectory of charged particles, electrons and protons mainly, which precipitate into the upper atmosphere, and the resulting ionization and excitation of the particles in the atmosphere emits light. Pretty nifty. I mean, I could get into way more detail because that's kind of highly scientific, and I'm not sure I even really understand it, but I'm not going into, 20-minute long rant about Aurora Borealis and all the scientific stuff. It's pretty lights in the sky. That's all you need to know. The Grand Canyon. I probably don't need to describe this too much, especially since most people listening to this are probably American. It's a great big canyon in Arizona, which is in the US, if you didn't know, which I'm sure you did. It's 277 miles, or 446 kilometers long, and 18 miles, or 29 kilometers wide at its widest. The deepest it goes is about 6,000 feet, or just under 2,000 meters. Now, how did it come about? Well, the Colorado River, which runs through the canyon, as well as its tributaries, cut their channels through the rock while the Colorado Plateau was uplifted. Now, this started 5 to 6 million years ago, and over time, the river has continued to cut into the ground, making the canyon deeper and deeper. Or, if you're an old Earth creationist, it was made that way and all the evidence of erosion over millions of years is just there to trick you. You can decide. Next, we have the Great Barrier Reef. This is the world's largest coral reef system, composed of over 2,900 individual reefs. It's over 2,300 kilometers or 1,400 miles long. It's located off the coast of Queensland, Australia. It's made up of billions of tiny organisms called coral polyps, and there's tons of biodiversity at the reef. It's home to all kinds of sea life. Now, as you may have heard, climate change is greatly affecting the reef. There's a big issue with coral bleaching. As ocean temperatures warm, especially in the northern parts of the reef, large parts of it have started dying. And there's also much lower birth rates of coral, which means not only are parts dying, but it's growing way more slowly. And this is also changing the composition of the coral because the warmer water temperatures are forcing natural selection to happen much faster. It's basically a calamity event that's really speeding up this selection process. So those that can survive in the warmer temperatures are doing okay, but the ones that can't are dying off right quick. Next, we have Victoria Falls. This is a large waterfall on the Zambezi River in southern Africa, on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. It's one of the world's largest waterfalls, with a width of 1,708 meters, or 5,604 feet. It's home to a large amount of savanna wildlife, because it's a savanna area, like elephants, buffalo, giraffes, zebras, antelopes, lions, leopards, baboons, hippos, crocs, and honey badgers. Nice. And yes, this too is affected by climate change. Rising temperatures make the region hotter and drier, to the point where it may, sometime in the future, be a dry waterfall at certain times. Still, it would still look impressive, don't get me wrong, but the water kinda makes it. Finally, we have Perikutin, or Perikutin, or whatever. I don't know. Something like that. It's a cinder volcano found in Michoacan, Mexico. Michoacan is one of the 32 states of Mexico, with each state divided into 113 municipalities. I just thought that would be a good time for a quick Mexican geography lesson because I know very little about it. You may too. Now, this was cool as hell because we actually got to see the volcano erupt and be formed in real time, which doesn't happen often. Basically, in 1943, the volcano suddenly popped up in a cornfield. And over the years, the various eruptions spewed out stone, ash, and lava, which then hardened, creating the cinder core, which makes up the volcano. By 1952, the cone was 424 meters, or 1,391 feet, tall. It's now dormant, though, so it's a tourist attraction. Also, I'm ashamed to admit that I had literally never heard of this volcano or those eruptions or anything like this ever until now. Which is pretty pathetic, because that sounds insane. A volcano just sprouted up in the middle of a farm. What? Now, apparently this wasn't without signs, like there were a lot of locals were reporting lots of thunder sounds, even though there wasn't thundering. And apparently this was caused by the earthquakes under the ground and moving magma and whatnot. But it's really freaky. All right, that's the 7 natural wonders of the world, and that ends it for this week in terms of the topics. But I still have to do philosophy. I'm not going to drop that. So this week's philosophy goes out to, I guess, probably more young people, but also, you know, if you're still in the dating scene and struggling, then you too. There's a lot of kind of weird talk about how to go about dating. On the one hand, we have people who talk about, you know, here are all the strategies you need to have in order to pick up, and you're going to get all the sexy gals if you just nag them and do this and do that. On the other hand, you have people saying, just be yourself. Just gotta be yourself and everything will be okay. And I don't think either of those are precisely correct. But I fall very far on the spectrum towards just be yourself. Now, this is within reason, because part of a relationship is give and take, and part of it is you can improve. So if there are things that you do, parts of your personality that are unhelpful, you can change them, right? Like if there are annoying things that you do, and trust me, there are some annoying things that I do, and it bothers your partner or your potential partner, that doesn't mean you just say, screw it, this is who I am, take it or leave it, right? You can change. You can improve. You can bite your tongue sometimes if you disagree with something they said. That's specific to me. But at the same time, if there are things that are important to you, don't change those. If you really like anime, and your potential partner hates anime, and not just hates, but judges people who like it, or they would think less of you if you liked it, and you would feel the need to just hide the fact that you enjoy anime in order to be with them, don't be with them. There are so many people in this world that you can date. You don't want to choose one where you can't be yourself. And this is yourself in the important sense. So don't be nervous talking to a crush, because eventually they're going to get to know the real you either way. So why would you waste days, weeks, months trying to pretend you're someone else and knowing that the real you is going to come out at some point and then they'll either like it or not like it, when you can just get it all out there from the beginning? That way, if the person doesn't like it, guess what? Your relationship wasn't going to work anyway. And if they do like it, guess what? You don't need to hide it anymore. It's brilliant. It's like a cheat code. So, what I'm saying is, be yourself within reason. You need to honestly appraise what aspects of yourself are intrinsic to you and important to you and are things that you don't want to change, and what aspects of yourself are just kind of annoying. And they can change. Or even if they're not annoying in general, maybe they're annoying to your partner. Anyway, that is my philosophy for this week. I don't know. Hope some people find it helpful. It's so freeing to just be yourself. And it really reduces the anxiety. Because I find a lot of my anxiety comes from not wanting people to know who I am because I think I suck. But you know what? Some people, for whatever reason, don't think I suck. But if you're just yourself, the people who think you suck will go away. And the people who don't think you suck will stick around. And then you can just be you with people who think you are cool for who you are. Sounds cheesy, but it's true. That's it for this week on Stuff I Googled This Week. I really appreciate you watching, listening, doing whatever. If you're still around now, well done. And hopefully you learned something about the wonders of the world. I sure did. And this has actually been very interesting for me. Now, since I'm the one who read through the stuff and condensed it and all that stuff, I'm probably going to remember it more than you. But hopefully there are a few things that you can keep in the back of your mind, and maybe they'll even be useful at some point. Who knows? I hope you have a great week, and, stay safe out there. The Americans have an election coming up, which is very important. Please vote Biden. Just get the guy out. But everywhere else in the world, except apparently New Zealand, we got to deal with COVID. So please, please be safe. Wear a mask. Socially distance when you can. Don't party. That shouldn't have to be said, but apparently college students in my town don't realize that that's a bad thing. And you know what? Just live your life. Try to be happy. And tune in next week to Stuff I Googled This Week. Anyway, be good, folks. Later, Gators.